everybody. Welcome to the Technical Analysis webinar here with AvaTrade. My name is Troy. I'll be presenting. As we get started, let's do a quick systems check. If you would, just type OK in the chat box if you're hearing me clearly and seeing my screen all right. Okay, great. Looks like we're up and running fine. If anyone has any issues as we go along, feel free to let me know. As always, keep in mind there's risk involved with each trade that you take, so you want to manage risk in a way that makes sense for you. We'll go over some ideas in that regard with some of the tools that are built into our web trader. You'll also find those features in our mobile app, and it really makes the risk management side of things quite a bit simpler. And also keep in mind, as we go over the ideas and concept, that what we're covering is not meant to be financial advisement, but is coming from an educational perspective. Now, from our main website, we can access our web trader, which allows you to trade on MT4 and MT5 accounts from one location. The same is true with our mobile app, which you can find in the major app stores. Now, if we log in here, then we'll find ourselves in the web trader. And before we get into the technical analysis side of things, it would make sense to talk a little bit about what's happening fundamentally currently, because a lot of times it's helpful to know which way the wind is blowing, so to speak, with the fundamental news as you go in to do your technical analysis, because then you might have a preferred direction that you think certain instruments are more likely than not to trend. Now, what I can say about the fundamental situation today is, in general, it's been pretty quiet, but maybe the biggest news would be that Jerome Powell, he spoke yesterday and also again today. And so some of what he was asked about and what he gave information about is with regards to the timing of possible interest rate cuts. What is his thinking on the parameters around the rules behind what would make him decide that it's time to cut interest rates? And so as the FOMC committee, which is the committee that kind of meets about monetary policy in the US, and Jerome Powell along with them, as they decide what to do with interest rates in the US, the markets tend to react to any information surrounding that. And so basically he alluded to the fact that the US FOMC committee and himself believe that the high interest rates that were purposely raised up to try and slow down inflation have done a pretty good job. Inflation has come down quite a bit, and the question is, where's the target, and how low does it need to be before interest rates could start to be decreased back down? And so Jerome Powell alluded to the fact that indeed there's been a slowdown in certain economic parameters. Inflation is in a trajectory that is more downward than upward, but has not reached what many believe the target to be, which would be like 1.8% inflation, or something below 2%. And basically what Jerome Powell said today was, doesn't necessarily have to get below 2% for interest rate decreases to begin. And so the markets liked that idea. They liked that statement. And so the stocks got a bit bullish. The US dollar got a little bit weaker, and instruments like gold were able to bounce against the USD a bit easier. And you can think of the idea, as interest rates go up, the strength of the currency gets stronger because the currency becomes more expensive. And if interest rates are expected to be more likely to go down now because of what was said today, lower interest rates tends to weaken the strength of a currency in general. And so the markets like the idea of lower interest rates. And so, it's too bad that we have to slow the economy down to be able to agree that interest rates could go back down, but that's really been the objective with trying to bring inflation down, is to slow the economy down. And what was said today was deemed more bullish than bearish in terms of how the market reacted to the idea that, hey, interest rates could maybe start to be lowered even if inflation doesn't get below 2%. Okay, and that's really the biggest news I have today fundamentally. But that gives us a direction that maybe we prefer to find entry points. If there's an instrument like gold that you think will rise because the USD is a little bit weaker with what was said today, and people leave the US dollar many times if they think the US dollar is going to weaken, they buy a safe haven like gold, or they buy into the stock market. So, and among other things. And so we can take a look at some of these instruments and see, are any of these above a support level that now we think we can trust, that the price might bounce up from? Did they already go up and it's not an opportunistic entry point anymore? We'll see. So we'll look at some instruments and see what we can find. So I mentioned gold, and so let's take a look and see what's going on with gold. There's probably a technical signal we can look at for help with our technical analysis. And so if I expand the chart on gold, these are 30-minute candles. Indeed, gold has been climbing today, and I see a spike right here around the time Jerome Powell was speaking. Okay, this is a spike up just before he started, a spike down. So an opportunistic pullback if you think gold will strengthen. While he was speaking, leading up to him speaking at 5 o'clock, which is right here, that's my time when he was speaking, and your platform will be in your local time. So gold went up leading up to it and pulled down while he was speaking, and now it looks like trying to bounce again. Okay, if we look for a signal on gold, let me click on the signal. It's indeed a buy signal. Okay, so the analysts with Trading Central apparently believe the USD should weaken against gold currently in their prediction. The signal is to buy with take profit up between 23.92 and even above 2400 up to 2407. Okay, the pivot line's down at 2369, meaning if this movement drops below this price that's labeled pivot in the signal, it's a support level where it used to be resistance, then the price came up here and held and became support. So they're saying as long as it doesn't drop below there, it's still a buy signal. If it does drop below this price, then they say the momentum must have changed. Something maybe changed fundamentally. If it breaks this technical support level below this pivot level, then they say expect further dropping. Okay, but currently it's above the pivot level, so it's an active buy signal. Now going into this, we already talked that there's kind of reason for the USD to weaken today. So this is what I mean by getting an idea fundamentally which way is the wind blowing in your mind. And maybe the idea was maybe the USD has reason to weaken today, and maybe commodities like gold have reason to go up against it. And then we look at the signal, and now we have another thing on our checklist to say, okay, Trading Central thinks gold should climb as well. And we look at the technical analysis ourselves, and we confirm, yeah, that's a support level here, and it hasn't broken. It looks like an uptrend overall on the screen. So then now we have a third reason on our checklist to say, okay, maybe I agree. I would perhaps buy on this because the fundamentals maybe are behind it. The signal from the technical signal from Trading Central looks like it's set up nice, and my own technical analysis looking at the support and resistance levels looks like it is an uptrend and maybe an opportunistic entry point because it pulled back recently within that uptrend. Okay, so if you decided, okay, indeed, I maybe want to make a move on this. So, the pivot level's at 2369. This is a line from last week that I drew. That support resistance level was already there. Just creep it up to where they have it now, slightly higher, 2369. Okay, so then we can expand the chart. We can say, okay, if I decide I want to buy on this, let me look at the technicals here. If I'm just scalping a short-term move, I could say, okay, here's today's high. I could take profit at today's high for a short profit gain. Certainly it could reach there without much momentum because it was there just a couple hours ago. So that would be going after maybe a $6 or $7 per ounce move. You also could look at this from a larger perspective. 2-hour candles shows me that not that long ago we were up at this high over here. Okay, this was resistance going into the end of last week and the beginning of this week. We were here. Okay, and if this indeed is going to rise with a weakening USD, it depends. How important do you think what Jerome Powell said today is? I think it's pretty important, and I think it could have a lasting effect, at least through the day today, to maybe cause some momentum upward against the USD. Okay, and you don't have to agree, but it's the process I'm trying to show you, that when you have fundamental news and you feel a certain way about it, then you start to do your technical analysis to set yourself up in that direction. Okay, so this is the pivot level, the support / resistance level from the past. I probably would put my stop loss below that, because in that signal from Trading Central, it says if it drops below this price, then they would expect it to drop further. So it makes sense to get my stop loss just below there. So my stop loss, I might say 23.67, something like that, a couple dollars below the pivot. My take profit, I could look up here at this resistance up here, okay, 23.90. That's one option. If I want a longer term move, maybe I look at 1-day candles, okay? Maybe I think it's big enough news that it'll break the high on these candles and go towards the next resistance up here, okay? In which case, I can delete these lines. And now I'm looking on the 1-day candles to say if this indeed has momentum, and if it breaks this resistance here, it doesn't have significant resistance in the candles from a technical analysis perspective until you get up here, okay? So I'm looking at 24.26, 24.27, where the next resistance is, if indeed it breaks this resistance here from late last week, okay? So you have options depending on what's your style of trading. Are you going after a short-term move? You take profit here. Longer-term move, maybe up here. And you can do both, by the way. I could take one trade with a take profit here, another trade with a take profit here. Okay? So you can diversify in that way as well within the same instrument. So I'm going to go with this one up here, okay? 24 or 26. Maybe that's more my style, to be more patient and wait for a little longer move. So take profit 24, let's say 25, just before that resistance up there, a few dollars before the resistance, okay? And then my stop loss just needs to be below the pivot, 23.67, because Trading Central says if it drops below 23.69, it might continue to drop. Okay, so I'll use that technical guide from the technical signal combined with my view of the fundamental news from today and the current uptrend, and combine that with our own technical analysis for a longer term move. Here's the resistance up here, and try and take profit just before that resistance, and maybe by the end of this week it could get up there. Okay. One thing about monetary policy statements is they don't tend to change the next day. So what Jerome Powell said today, that could have lasting effects through the week. Now, there are some announcements coming still this week that could swing the momentum, but we'll see. You can always modify your plan and close a trade early if the news goes against your move the next day. Okay, so take profit then is set, stop loss is set. The ratio is about 3-to-1, potential profit to risk. Now that I've got my exit points planned for take profit and stop loss, now I can adjust the trade size so that the potential profit and the possible loss are at a level that's acceptable to me. So maybe I don't want to risk $5,500 on a balance of 63,000. Yeah, it's over or near, I should say, 10%. Not quite, but a bit higher risk than I would want per trade. So, if I switch this to one lot, now I'm risking 4,400. Okay, if I only want to risk 1%, I need to be somewhere around 630 with this balance if I want 1% risk. So, and it depends. How much do you want to risk per trade? 0.5%, 1%, 3%. That's up to each trader. But now if I do half a lot, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the take profit here, but half a lot gets me down on a possible loss to 600, 700. So I'm getting close on the possible loss down here in the stop loss. And my take profit is still over 2,200. Okay, so let's go 0.45, and that might get me right around 1%. That's under 1% risk of my balance, around 600, below the 630 and change. And so now that I'm at an acceptable level of risk, and I think the possible profit is nice enough for me to want to make the trade, then I go ahead and make the trade. Okay, so very simple to do the risk management with the way our web trader sets things up in the order window. It makes it simple to understand what am I risking, what's my possible profit, and then you can make your move in an informed way. Any questions on what we just went over in terms of the process of thinking about fundamental news, maybe using the technical signals that we supply on the platform from Trading Central, and combining that maybe with your own technical analysis? We certainly could have put an indicator on the chart as well if you're into using the RSI, the stochastic indicator, whatever your favorite indicator is, but there are hundreds of them. That's why I tend not to lean towards indicators, because everyone kind of has their favorite one, and you can always throw it on the chart to see if it confirms what you're thinking as well. I tend to rely more on support and resistance levels like we're looking at. But indicators certainly can be part of your plan as well. But once you put that together and you have enough in your checklist to support your move, then you make your trade. Okay. And maybe you have 4 things you're looking at, and you want 3 out of 4 of what you look at in your checklist to agree. Or maybe you need all 4 or 3 out of 3 things on your checklist to agree before you make the trade. And that's up to each individual trader. But the more things that are in your favor in your mind, then you're more certain to make that move. Okay, and I don't see any questions popping up, so I'll go ahead. We can maybe go a different direction. Instead of going with a technical signal straight away, we could look at some fundamental news real quick, maybe in a tool like the Market Buzz that we find over here. Okay, that's in this menu here, Discovery menu, Market Buzz. And so we can look at any instrument to see what's the latest news out there buzzing on any instrument. And I can pick anything. The bigger the circle here, the more information there is that we're finding on that instrument. So, I mean, I can really pick anything. Here's Microsoft. We'll get a technical signal on most of the instruments. And we can also read articles about that particular instrument. What's happening in recent times? There are articles by the minute coming in, and they're all timestamped. So you could read an article, see if there's something here that makes you feel like you want to buy or sell on the instrument that you're reading about. And then you also can look at the technical signal. Okay, so sometimes you'll see headlines that jump out at you, sometimes you don't. The technical signal here says in the trend analysis that they think Microsoft will rise over 8%. You can click on that and get the breakdown with support and resistance levels, price level that they believe it will rise to, and also that pivot line we talked about from the other signal. If it drops below this blue line, then they say don't buy. You'd be looking for further downside towards the red lines. So we could pull up Microsoft, we could pull up any instrument we want that might interest us. And so, a lot of times it's instruments that we recognize a lot that are trending. Okay, we can look at, this one's in a smaller circle, Amazon. Doesn't mean it's not something that might not have good information and that you might want to sell on or buy on. Here's an article from Amazon. This is interesting. Amazon versus Temu, Shein, and TikTok Shop. Who's winning the use of, or who's winning the e-commerce battle? Okay, so if I click that, I can get a little synopsis. If that doesn't tell me enough, I can click on Story Continues and read the whole article. Okay, Amazon versus these other companies. Who's winning the US e-commerce battle? And you could go on and read. I think this goes on to say Amazon's dominance remains unshaken. So it seems like this is a bullish article for Amazon, but you can read the article straight from the source. In this case, Business Insider is giving us that information in the Market Buzz. And it's an article that came out just a little while ago. So it's fresh, fundamental news. And so if you combine maybe a few articles that start to convince you, hey, Amazon looks like maybe it should go up based on this news. Then you look at the technical signal, the trend analysis, which is saying it should go up over 9%. And you look at the price levels, maybe this makes you say, okay, let me look at the live chart. As long as it's above 192, it's expected to rise up near 214. So now we can, if I'm sold on it now, let's pretend I am, and I already know the USD was weakening today, and the markets were happy about what Jerome Powell said. So now I have multiple reasons to think that Amazon could rise. Okay, multiple fundamental reasons, not to mention the technical signal and trend analysis we just looked at says it should rise. So now I can go and take a look for myself at the live chart and see, do I want to buy on Amazon or not? Because so far all the news is saying buy on Amazon. So let's look, can decide if we like the price point. Maybe it already went up far enough that I'm not interested anymore. I actually see on the one-day candles that it's down so far today. Okay, so now you can start to look and see on smaller candles, is it a price point that looks opportunistic? Okay, I can see gaps when one day closes and then the next day opens. You see a gap in the price many times. So here's a gap from the close here on, looks like Thursday, and then the open on Friday. And then Friday closed up here, and on Monday the price dropped and closed back down where it closed this day, or where it opened on this day. Okay, so this looks like a support level that formed. You can see this was one day, this was another day, this was another day, and here's today. Okay, and this is price hit here once and went up, twice and went up, third time tested today, and looks like it's trying to hold on this price. Okay, so if indeed I was going to make a move on this, I would say, listen, if I want limited risk for a short-term move, I'll put my stop loss below this support level right here, because if it breaks below this support, then the momentum probably changed, because since last Friday, it held above this price for the most part. So if it breaks below these lows, then in my mind, that's a downtrend. So if it breaks below 197, I would say, that certainly would start a technical downtrend. And where could I take profit? Well, the signal said up above 200, 210, up in that area. So if I go back to one-day candles now, or 1 week, we can start to look to see, is there any resistance above? And what we find is these stocks are at all-time highs, some of them, especially the tech stocks. So there's no resistance up here beyond the all-time high that it hit recently. Okay, so if we go back to say 4-hour candles, we can start to take a look and say, if it breaks above 200, the next round number maybe is 210. And you know, the prediction was it could go up in that area, 210, 214, like a 9% rise. Okay, even a little higher than 210, 214 maybe. So if I start to then use the signal information for my take profit, I'm using the current live price and this support level from the past to get below where I think it would be the support area. So maybe 196, 197 for a stop loss. I'll go 197 even. Okay, that's a nice ratio, potential profit to risk. Okay, it doesn't always have to set up that way, but with that look, I think I'll sneak my stop loss down just a little further to 196 to be sure it's a true downtrend before I would give up on this if it goes the wrong way. So 196 for the stop loss. And I still have about 4-to-1 ratio potential profit to risk. Okay. My risk is below 1% of my balance, so maybe I'm happy just to leave it right where it is. And if I like the setup, I like the potential profit, I can go ahead and put my move in motion. Okay. Let me take a look. I see some questions have popped up. Let me see what these questions are about. Okay, so demo version, you can request a demo account to your account manager or our support team. They'll assist you with setting up a demo account. You should see in your client area, real quick, if I go here to the main menu, go to your My Accounts section, and when you're in your My Accounts section, there's a tab for adding more accounts. You can add more live accounts, so you can also add demo accounts. If the demo account option is there, perhaps you already had one and it expired, you can request to have another demo account, okay? Okay, you're asking, you said you had a signal for 3 or 4 hours earlier. It hasn't reached, you say market value. How do we approach those signals? I'm not sure what you mean that it hasn't reached market value. The signals are live. You can take a look and see if it's a valid signal still, it means it didn't break to the other side of the pivot line. And you can act on those at any time, even if it's 3 or 4 hours past. But I would do a review of the fundamental news before acting, kind of how we demonstrated, to make sure that you feel like the fundamental news isn't working against you. Because those signals, if they're 3 or 4 hours old, maybe since then a new headline came out in the market buzz. Maybe an announcement already occurred since that signal came out on the economic calendar. And you have to evaluate that new fundamental news. Does it work for that signal or against that signal? Because when the signal came out, that news wasn't known yet. Okay, so that's why I always start the technical analysis webinar with saying it makes sense to evaluate what you know about the fundamental news first, and then go in and do your technical analysis. Okay, looks like this Amazon trade is trying to bounce off the support level now. We see a nice green candle forming. So we might have already bounced into the green, not just yet, trying to overcome the spread in the beginning, which is typical, but that's a good sign on that Amazon chart that it was bouncing off that support level. Okay, so I believe this is a good place that we could stop. We've gone through a couple strategy concepts, and I don't want to kind of, just repeat the same concept on different instruments because it works the same way. And at the same time, too much information at once sometimes gives diminishing returns. So what I would say is take a look at the markets, try to apply one or both of the strategy concepts that we used here today, even still, or through the week, and see what kind of success you can have by combining our tools like I showed you with the fundamental news, the technical signals, and by putting those together, you can actually build a nice strategy. And you should maybe be able to improve upon results if you were making trades without that type of information up till now. Okay, so you're asking, there's another question that popped up. Is there a replay option in the web version of AvaTrade? I'm not sure what you mean by a replay option. If you mean the price movements, we can't replay the price movements, but if you're asking about the webinars, they're all recorded and you can watch them over again on our YouTube channel to go back over what we've talked about as much as you might need. In that regard, you can rewind it, replay sections, etc. And usually by the next business day, each presenter, the webinars are uploaded by that next day. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. I appreciate your questions and participation. Good luck with your trading the rest of the week. My typical Thursday session, I'm out of the office, so I won't be doing that session tomorrow. So my next session will be next week, same time and night as today, okay? All right, everybody, good luck with your trading. Bye for now.